Welcome to the Mill and Sharma Show, a show that describes a variety of subjects through the lens of civil discourse. I'm your host Millen, and today I'll be doing a reaction video to the clip here titled "The Top 3 Rules for Being the Best Man You Can Be." And this is Dr. Peterson's wife who's asking the questions, and Dr. Peterson is going to answer the questions at a conference. For those of you who are unaware, Dr. Peterson is a psychologist, well-known best-selling author globally, and he's based in Toronto, Canada. So let's begin.
My wife and I came to see you for our honeymoon, and I'm going to be a dad.
Sounds like a successful honeymoon.
What are the top 3 rules for being the best man I can be for the people I love?
Well, rule number 1 is ask that question. That's a good question. That's a meditative and prayerful question.
First of all, I love that Dr. Peterson states that it's great that you're asking the question. Right now, at least in the West, we live in a culture where so many people don't ask these types of questions. They have a lack of awareness, and they believe that everything they're doing is right, and that any constructive criticism of whether it's parenting or any actions that they take is patronizing, and they want to get away from that. So asking the question is a fantastic start, and I love that Dr. Peterson is acknowledging this.
I don't think there's any difference, by the way, between prayer and thought. I think that thought is secularized prayer. I think that's even true, like evolutionarily and historically. And then the question is, what is prayer? And by implication, thought. And that is the opening up of yourself to revelation, and then the critical analysis of the revelation. And so what do I mean by that? I mean, when you think, you admit your ignorance, because why think if you're not ignorant? And you note that you have a problem, and you formalize the problem, which is to ask the question associated with the problem, and then you open yourself up for receipt of an answer. It's really important to get the question right. There's the first rule. Get the question right. That's a pretty good question. That question is, how am I the best father and husband in relationship to those I love? And then that has to be a question. And then you can ask yourself, think, okay, how would have I liked my father to have conducted himself? And how did fathers that I knew that I admired conduct themselves? And how did great men in history who would be models for fathers conduct themselves? And what is the eternal spirit of the redeeming father? Those are all the same question at different levels of depth. And
I think that's so fascinating how he states to look at people that you look up to, look at mentors, look at your father, the positive traits, some of the negative traits, being able to distinguish what was good and what was not, what was harmful, and being able to carry through the positive traits of whether it's your father or grandfather. I think that's really important because models are such good teachers, people and how they are. It's simple to simply look up an article and read how you should be, how a parent should be, how a father should be, but seeing how someone is and acts in your own life, that is one of the biggest teachers. That's one of the biggest teaching moments.
And if you ask yourself that question, you'll stumble towards a revelation of the answer. And then it's incumbent on you to embody that, to act it out. You could ask a different question. What stupid things am I doing that I could stop doing, that I would stop doing, both, that I could stop doing, that I would stop doing, that are interfering with me being that? And man, that's a great question to ask yourself every morning. What stupid thing am I doing that I could quit doing?
And I love that he's saying this because when you or anybody has the willingness to ask this question, you're admitting your flaws. You're admitting your own limitations, that you aren't the best. And when you have that awareness that you aren't at your best, your fullest self, that's when the biggest improvement can be made, because you realize this, okay, I'm not my my fullest autonomy at this point. I need to be better. It's stupid that I'm dwelling into these poor habits. I need to do better. What can I do differently? So you're already coming from a place of vulnerable. You're coming from a vulnerable place by admitting ignorance, by admitting limitations, and in that manner, you're more likely, at least in my opinion, to seek guidance, to look for ways to perform at a higher level, whatever that may be, or do better in whatever subject matter that may be. And I think that's one of the best things with psychology is that, and me being a psychology major in throughout university, one of the biggest drawing points that I got from it was that it allows you to go through life with a sort of guidance, but not advice. The biggest thing I learned from my professors was saying that psychologists and therapists don't give you advice, but allow you the pathway to to be more self-autonomous for guidance. So, for example, when you go to see a therapist, they ask you, what's the reason you're here? What do you want to get from this? And it allows you to be broached with that question. What do you want to get from this session? What do you want to get from these sessions? What's your goal? What's your ultimate goal and purpose for being here? And what do you want to leave? Where do you want to be when you're finished these sessions? And I think these type of questions are very integral for improvement, because many people say their lives suck. Many people say, I don't like this, I hate this, but there's no, if I hate this, what should I do differently? I hate this activity. Which activity will be better suited for my health, for my well-being, for my satisfaction? So those are just some of my thoughts that I had. Let's continue.
That I would quit doing, because those aren't the same thing, right? Because there's stupid things that you're doing that you're just not going to quit doing because you like them. But there might be something on the edge there where, weak and useless as you are, you could stop that. And part of the reason I wrote this one rule here, in the first book, I think it was. No, it must have been in the second book. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. No, that was the first book. That's rule 8 in the first book. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Well, why did I formulate it like that? It's like, well, you can't tell the truth because, what the hell do you know? But some of the things you say are lies, and you know it, and some of the lies that you tell, you could just stop telling. Well, start with that. Incremental death and regrowth. Incremental death and rebirth. And you let the lies die, and you let something new emerge instead, right? That's the resurrection. So you let the spirit of deceit perish, and you let the eternal spirit of redemption arise in its place. And that's really good for you, and it's really good for your wife. It'll spice up your sex life like mad. And because
I have to pause this here and say immediately, I love that he said, let me play that again real quick, actually.
So you let the spirit of deceit perish.
Right, so you let deceit and lies perish, and redemption comes forth afterward. I like that he states this because when you're aware of what's going on, you're aware, I want to be a better father. I want to be a better person in a particular way. My habits are holding me back. When you have this awareness in your line of questioning, you're going to be on a pathway toward resiliency in some manner. Whether that's overcoming something, adopting a new habit, or anything. When you have this line of questioning of awareness, then you're much more likely to have a solution for it, to at least combat that. Now, obviously, with things like mental health, it's very hard to have a clear-cut solution because he's a therapist, so I'm going to go with it through that route. But when you have at least awareness, you're more likely to grow and come out better. That's the truth. And I think I like it that he says that when you build a relationship, at least on deceits or lies or games like that, it's going to build up, and it's not going to be healthy. But when you have redemption, you're going to have full confidence moving forward. I think that's an inspiring message for everybody. So let me skip to that part where we left off.
And because she'll actually want to have you race up your sex life like mad, and because she'll actually want to have you around. And that's kind of useful if you're trying to seduce someone, even your wife, who you might think is otherwise obligated, and perhaps she is, but I don't know how much fun that is. Obligatory sex. It's like, that's not a very good idea. And it'll be really good for your kids, and maybe there's enough to you so that it won't just be good for you and your wife and your kids, but maybe it'll be good for your friends, and then maybe for your community, and who knows what would happen if you really got your act together. You know, like there is this weird idea that's central to our culture that because we're all of divine value, that we have the spark of God himself within us. And but we don't allow that to make itself manifest because we lack the courage and the faith. And yeah, I think that's exactly right.
Couldn't agree more.
And so it's an open question, you know, if you as a father decided you were going to take the bushel off your light, and that'd be great for your kids, you know. And one of the things you got to understand about your kids, this is really worth knowing. Your kids want to have the best relationship with you that they possibly could have. Like they're 100% on board with that idea. Way more than anyone you've ever met in your life. And that means you could have the best relationship with your children that you've ever had with anyone. That's what they offer you. And it's up to you to realize that, and you could. And that's a hell of that's a good opportunity, man.
Yeah, that's a great point that Dr. Peterson makes. I think that's where I've heard a saying before where children bring out the best in people. And I believe it's true. Someone can be very rude, someone can be very cold-hearted and just not the best person. But when you have your own child, or even if you see like your friend's children or something like that, you put yourself in a position to be cheerful, to be optimistic about life, more adventurous, and that it puts you in a position where you see a child growing up, and you see that person, you see the children kind of saying, you know, going through life through an adventurous lens, through a more optimistic lens, with all the pitfalls and chaos that happens in the world currently, in our culture and throughout society, and it gives you hope. And if someone, and I agree with Dr. Peterson when he says that you can resurrect your relationship, and you can build something fantastic that you couldn't build with anybody else, because the child doesn't know anything about you. It's a fresh start. It's a clean slate. And I believe that's something that's worth noting, and it's a very powerful thing to state here. So with that in mind, thank you for tuning in to the Millen Sharma Show. I'm your host, Millen. Thank you for watching this message and this reaction video on Dr. Jordan P. Peterson. And for those of you that would like to listen to the show throughout any audio platforms, such as Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anything else, the link is in the description below. Thank you very much for tuning in.